I've always found Catherine Austin Fitts to be one of the more credible people in our domain. And I'm so glad she didn't fall into the trap of going into mainstream media. Of course, I knew she wouldn't. When I interviewed her a long time ago, we talked about something called the Solari Project, fantastic work on independence. And she's still telling what she knows. If you don't know her history, Catherine Austin Fitts was an insider. She helped to run HUD. And she's seen corruption that U.S. aid found to look minuscule by comparison. Well, what we're going to do here in this particular segment is to talk about some of the revelations that she's making. I don't want to believe it's true. I want to believe that Trump is simply on the wrong track because of Israel's deception with regard to the war. But she indicts Trump directly for bringing in something that is pervasive, constitutionally unsound, and dangerous to every American. I wished it weren't true, but I'm not doing my job if I don't take someone who's credible and let her tell the story and you get to decide. My name is Dave Hodges. I am the host of the Common Sense Show, and in this segment, we are trying to free America one enslaved mind at a time. We're brought to you by Noble Gold. Uh, Trust me, Noble Gold can save you. If you have your retirement in the bank, it's as good as gone as the banks begin to fold. You need to get control of your IRA 401ks under your name, backed by a precious metal that'll appreciate value, not cash that'll depreciate. And you need to keep just operating capital in the bank. Well, who can help you with that? That's a lot. Noble Gold can help you with all of it. I know because I've been a customer for 9 years. All you got to do is go to noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. If you want to get quick access, call them 877 646 5347. They will never, ever, ever pressure you. I know I speak from experience. You almost have to close your own deal. Again, you can call 877 646 5347. I'm going to bring up something here just to for discussion. I'm not going to share it because it's hard to follow. It took me a while to organize this. Okay, so here's what we got. Catherine Austin Fitts is saying the following things, and then I'm going to conclude by playing a short 3-minute clip. The bankers put Trump in to build the control grid. Okay, I ran something yesterday, and I'll tell you, my instincts are taking me there. And after I read this morning, I said, "Man, I'm pretty well saying what Catherine's saying here too." I asked the question, does Trump control the digital crowd or does the digital crowd control Trump? It's a big question because this is where we're headed. Okay. Now, it says he's done an A+ job of building it. It's a uniparty. Oh, I know that all too well. I live in Arizona, the king of uniparties, where the GOP is more dangerous to constitutional liberties than the Democratic Party. As hard as that for most of you around the country to be believing, if you live in Arizona, you know I'm telling you the truth. Catherine Austin Fitts broke down how Trump is finishing decades-long plan to turn America into a mass surveillance police state. I don't want this to be true, but I'll tell you, if you look at precursor events in the Bible leading up to the tribulation, this is one of those things. Here's what she said. I think Trump was chosen by the New York Fed member bankers to get the control grid. His job is to persuade. There are three general baskets of what you need to do. First is programmable money. Second is digital ID. To do programmable money, you have to have digital ID, and digital ID is unconstitutional. National ID is unconstitutional. And it doesn't make you any safer when you fly. That is the biggest hokey thing I think I've ever heard. Because you could fake a digital ID. Why do they want the average person to have it? Well, let's continue. We'll find out. The third thing you need is the hardware and the software infrastructure to do the social credit system and surveillance you need to do the two above things. Okay, well, let me mention to you here, there's a lot here that's in this statement. You need the hardware and software infrastructure to do the social credit. Social credit. It's like Santa's naughty and nice list. If you're naughty, you're going to get fined. And if you're really naughty, well, we're just going to cut you off. Good luck trying to survive. Do you like eating out of garbage cans and sleeping on the street? But we'll make that illegal too. And it says, and surveillance. Every move you make, to quote the police, the music group, every move you make, every breath you take, we'll be watching you. Should be every move you make, every breath you take, we'll be stalking you. Surveillance state. It's pretty well come on, we've all had this experience. Hey, I want to talk about a trip. Honey, let's talk about going to Maui. Okay, good. And you have a 2-minute conversation, and then your media on your computer, your cell phone, anything within earshot, Alexa starts popping up with the ads. Come to Maui. Hey, flight specials, discounted hotel room. I mean, we've all had that experience, right? Okay, so we already have a police state, but it's going to be minuscule compared to where it's going. So to do these things, you need the data centers. Oh, I love this. I love the data centers. The data centers, oh, I drove out by ones out near what we call the 303 State Highway and Interstate 17 yesterday. And I drove by, it's been a few months since I drove out there. It's ginormous. It's its own city. It's incredible. Well, the data centers are causing my utility bill to go up 17% next year, and my water bill is going up an equivalent amount. I am so happy that they get to take my money so billionaires can make more money at my expense for my tax money and my individual utility rates. And this is happening all across the country. I've actually prepared something to present, and I just haven't had time to get to it because there's been other pressing things, but it's right along these lines. And I probably will have to go and present this now. I'll probably do it tomorrow. Um, it says, so you need all these data centers, according to Catherine, but you also need a surveillance infrastructure and enforcement infrastructure to back it. Do you know how this mentality is spreading? It's like a stage 4 cancer. Right now in Phoenix, there are people objecting to their HOAs flying surveillance drones over their properties to look in the backyard to make sure they don't have any illegal bushes or garden growing. Can you believe this? But this is where we're going. If you really want to know the end result, go to the World Economic Forum and some of the interviews I did with Clay Clark. I think you can catch those on Rumble. Okay, let's go on. How do you persuade conservatives and people in the heartland to embrace building that infrastructure? Well, you have to have the ability to elect people that the people don't want. And there's a number of ways of doing it. Catherine says, we don't have an election problem, we have an immigration problem. And I think the implication is true. If you look at Chuck Schumer, 20 million people are going to be disenfranchised if we pass the Save American Act. Okay, he's probably right. But they're not American citizens. You see the difference? Okay. And then she goes on to say, and she's being a little flippant here and sarcastic, and I happen to agree with her tone. Catherine says, and we need to put together a private army called ICE with detention centers all over the country. Whoa, hold on. The nearest city to me, I live in unincorporated Maricopa County, but the nearest city to me is Surprise, Arizona. Interesting name for a city, right? The Surprise government. It's been a surprise to us. Another story for another time. But anyway, in Surprise, and by the way, if you ever go to a public meeting of Surprise, don't ever expose the financial misdeeds of the officials because they will drag you out by your hair, literally and figuratively. Anyway, that aside, at Surprise, Arizona, they built a huge federal detention center. And they say it's for illegal aliens. And it can hold 1,500. Well, the people in Surprise are upset. The mayor came out and said, no one consulted with us. It's federal. They have the land. They can do it. Sorry, mayor. Okay. But feeling the pressure and knowing funding is at stake in Congress now, they're playing nice with local. We'll give tours. We'll open it up. We'll show you there's nothing to worry about. Yeah, I'm real worried about it. I'll get to that in a minute. And then they said, well, we'll only hold 500. Okay, the fact is you have this ginormous facility that could hold up to 1,500. Doesn't matter if you reduce the amount you say you're going to have, it can still hold 1,500. And my fear is this: 1,500 of what? Hold that thought. Let me go to something I just said to a guest I interviewed, John Clark, Attorney John Clark. We compared the assassination MOs between Charlie Kirk, JFK, and Vince Foster. Okay. And John's an attorney. And I brought these things up to him, some of these concerns I had. The FCC, here's a big one. They said this 10 days ago. To you broadcasters out there, if you question the war, if you give anything that we think is misinformation, we'll pull your broadcast license. And John had heard of this. And John said, Dave, that's unconstitutional. I said, yeah, that's what I thought. I said, but you're the attorney, John. He goes, Dave, it's unconstitutional. Does it sound like this emerging police state cares about the Constitution? That's why I gave this as an example. This is just one example. If we go back to the Biden administration, testimony in the House Oversight Committee led by James Comer, they established the fact that Biden and his FBI sat down with social media and says, you want to allow this, you want to allow that, and this person's trouble, get rid of them. And it was the basis for censorship. Trump came in and supposedly undid all this. Now, that's the House Oversight Committee. If that's not true, I apologize, but I'm going off what the government did in open public hearings. Okay, so let me read to you this phrase again. And we need to put together a private army called ICE and detention centers all over the country who are free to enforce without constitutional protections in violation of the law to get these hardened criminal immigrants out. What if we're the hardened criminals? Your ideas are dangerous. We're not just going to pull your broadcast license. You may not be a broadcaster, but we do have a place where we can re-educate you. And I feel the need now that I'm going to have to, in future shows, revisit some things I've talked about years ago. FM 39.4, quote unquote, the vernacular slang term would be FEMA camps. Rex 84, the brainchild of all this. The National Defense Authorization Act that just passed. It's no respecter of the Constitution, I can tell you that. No respecter of your civil liberties and due process. All you got to do is be on the wrong side of a presidential declaration, and you have no rights. We'll get into that in more detail, but I'm just telling you that's where I'm afraid this is headed. And you won't be thinking about immigrants going into this facility in Surprise, Arizona, as well as around the country. You're going to be thinking about, am I going to go there? Have I said and done things in the past where I'm going to be a threat? I've already told you the NSA maintains a 16-point threat matrix evaluation of every person, and then they have an aggregate score. We don't know where the naughty or nice list goes, and are there degrees of dealing with people who aren't on board with the emerging tyranny? That's what we don't, I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, let's go back to Catherine. But in fact, it's hard, excuse me, but in fact, it's not to get the hardened immigrants out. It's to manage the control grid. She's saying what I just expressed with FM 39.4. And then there's always Executive Order 13603. Are you familiar with that from Obama, 2011? Do I need to do some follow-up shows on these authoritarian, unconstitutional executive orders, provisions of Congress, administrative law, all unconstitutional? If you think I do, well, then make a comment and tell me, Dave, we need to know more about this. And I will come at you with documents. You see, they convict themselves in their intentions with their own words. I don't have to assume or surmise anything. They tell me everything I needed to know. And I got branded conspiracy theorist before, and I just says, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just looking for what are threats to our Constitution. Well, Dave, that's conspiracy theory. Well, it's not conspiracy theory if it's in a government document. Now it's a conspiracy fact against the people. That's what concerns me. And this is the public discussion that we should be having. Do you not agree? Well, if not, let me have Catherine speak for herself. because I've done a job of speaking for her. And Catherine, if you listen to this, I hope I got it right. Yeah, this would be Catherine in her own words. Okay, so here we go.
I
U.S.
think Trump is entirely expendable.
Yeah.
The bankers put him in to get the control grid, and he's done an A-plus job of building it and persuading people to go along with it in high speed. And the conservatives, it's a uniparty. So let's go back to the US. The US is very simple to understand. The US, the whole economy runs off the federal credit. So 40 to 50% of the income in any county is directly or indirectly coming off of the federal credit. So, we've really developed a Soviet economy. We've really centralized. And it's one of the reasons we have so many more billionaires because they're making a fortune on government contracts and government purchases and sort of rigged government deals. Anyway, if you look at how that system works, every year the federal government has $6 trillion of expenses and $4 trillion of revenues. And that means $2 trillion comes from, the central banking money machine. And so that's what controls. And the question is, how do you market and sell to the population the things you want to do? And so I think Trump, and I said this in 2024, was chosen by the New York Fed member bankers to basically get the control grid. His job was to persuade. So let's look at the control grid. There are three general baskets of what you need to do. The first is programmable money. The second is digital ID. To do programmable money, you require digital ID. And then the third is you need the hardware and the software infrastructure to do the social credit system and surveillance that you need to do those two things. And so you need.
Let me digress for a second. The social credit system that our companies in America set up for communist China. I'm just going to give you one example. If you walk outside the crosswalk, so you're in this giant city, it could be Shanghai, Beijing, and so the light changes and people are in a hurry, so they might actually step outside the boundary a little bit of that line, maybe 6 inches a foot. They know who you are, facial recognition. You'll have received that day, almost immediately, a notice for a fine that you have to pay. And not only that, with these public shaming monikers, they have these telescreens, kind of like going to a sporting event. But what you see there are people who have committed crimes against the state, whether you walked out of a crosswalk or you said something negative or perhaps could be negative on social media, and your name appears and you are shamed. And they're trying to hurt people, trying to get jobs, and they hurt reputations, future mates, future friends, whatever. And the idea is you'll comply completely or else. And this is ultimately what she's talking about here. I want to make sure that there's no doubt as to where this is headed.
All the data centers is the big one, but you also need a surveillance infrastructure and enforcement infrastructure to back it. So how do you persuade conservatives and people in the heartland to embrace building that infrastructure? The way you do it is you say, oh, we have election fraud, or oh, we have an immigration problem. And so we need a digital ID to identify who everybody is so we can't have fraud. Now, remember, we had borders and elections before digital technology. So it's a bunch of hooey, but it works. And oh, we need to put together a private army called ICE with detention centers all over the country who are free to enforce without constitutional protections in violation of the law to get these hardened criminal immigrants out. But in fact, it's not to get the hardened immigrants out, it's to manage the control grid and do what you have to do when people.
And to get dissenters out. And they're so bodacious about it. The FCC chair had no problem coming out and saying, if you criticize the war, we're not going to let you broadcast. So much for freedom of the press and First Amendment rights, correct? Anyway, I really admire Catherine Austin Fitts. She is a true American patriot. I mean, and she comes from within the system, people. This isn't someone who woke up and said, I want to get some YouTube clicks today. I want to be on Rumble and get all kinds of popularity and money will be rolling in and people will know who I am. That's not what she's about. She came from the inside, and it's like Joe Kent. She's repulsed by what she's seeing, and she's trying to expose it so enough of us get educated, we can course correct and change it. That discussion will happen in more detail later, but I think what the issues that she raised about confinement, I think you want me to cover this in more detail with absolute proof, with receipts from the government. Nothing that, hey, I've been told that. I've been told a lot of things. A lot of it's come true. I got told a lot of things about Benghazi and I stuck my neck out and I was right about that. But I'm not going to do that here. If I cover this here, I will cover this government document, okay? Executive Order 13603, Section 601. What are they going to do with your food? That's how specific I'll be, and I'll show you the words on screen. So if you want to see that, let me know. Hey, I'm Dave Hodges. Check out our TV show, thecommonsenseshow.tv. You'll love it. We cover fun things and we cover serious things, and people like the blend.